Hey everyone, and welcome to my very first devlog. There is no name yet. A project I'm excited to share with you. In today's video I'll be giving you a general overview of the game I've been working on for the past 6 months. I won't go into too much detail since I'm trying to cover as many topics as possible in today's devlog, to give you a brief overview of the game. I wanted to make a game like Skyrim, but with the rough conditions and the challenges the player is facing in Gothic. What I love most about Gothic are the brutally direct dialogues.
Ich bin gekommen, dir dein großes Maul zu stopfen. Verpiss dich. Willst du, dass ich kotze? Wie sieht's aus? Verpiss dich! Ich glaube, ich muss dir jetzt leider die Fresse polieren.
So, with that said, let's get into it. First off, let me introduce you to the story of my game. It's an open world RPG that takes place in a mountainous area called Marseille. Thousands of years ago, powerful mages ruled over the entire land. But one of them angered the gods by trying to claim the powers of this dimension and the dimension of the gods for himself. Thereafter, the gods sent Nvidia, the god of destruction, as a punishment to mankind. A few mages managed to survive and to banish the god of destruction. Some cultists believed that Anuvir would bring salvation, which led them to found the Order of Anuvir. Since then, they are trying to help the god of destruction to his former power and free him. In exchange, he promised to spare the cultists. Therefore, the land is overrun by cultists and other creatures coming from the other dimension through cracks. The player has to stop the Order and defeat Anuvir as a main goal. But there will be a lot of side quests to the game too. The core gameplay mechanics like the crafting system, inventory system, combat system, skill and level system are working so far. But as you can see, there is still a lot of work to do on the UI and the animations. Additionally, I already have a save system, but I still need to update it in a few areas. If you are a developer, you probably know how much work a save system requires in an open world game, so it's always a good idea to start early with it. I always thought there would be a magic button where it just saves the game as it is, but you have to store every variable manually. That means you have to store the player's health, stamina, mana, equipped items, inventory and so on. So there are a lot of variables to store. Once you have done that, you also need to load each variable, so chances are high you might be missing something. Before we have a closer look at the game, let's talk about my skill set as a solo developer for a second. I am not a 3D or 2D artist. I have a little experience with Blender and Photoshop, but that's it. So most of the assets you are seeing are assets from the Unreal Engine marketplace. But of course, I'm also trying to implement custom-made meshes, and I enjoy working on UI elements using a combination of Photoshop and CAD programs. Also, I have no programming background at all. When I started working on this game back in October 2022, simultaneously I started learning how to actually make games. So I had no idea what I was doing back then. I also started a few small projects to learn and test things, but I also managed to finish my first game called Voodoo Hunter in 2 weeks during the Enigma Game Jam. Up until now, I'm only using the blueprint system of Unreal Engine. I watched a few C++ tutorials, but there is still a lot other stuff for me to learn. So I will stick with blueprints for now. But as you can see, I'm a musician myself. So I will write all the music and create most of the sound effects myself. I haven't started with the music yet except for some drafts, but I already added a few spell and combat sounds. There will be a 4 square kilometer big map. I tried some different map sizes starting at 36 kilometers, but then I realized I'm making this game solo, so I want to finish it in a reasonable amount of time. Once again, I took the Gothic series as a model for inspiration and want to focus more about making the map feel big, instead of actually making it big. But 4 square kilometers is still a huge landscape, so I want to generate as much as possible procedurally. By the way, the program I'm using for creating the landscape is called Gaia and comes with some handy tools for creating rivers, seas and even arboreal maps, which can be used to spawn foliage only in certain areas. Combined with the procedural foliage spawner, you can get some realistic and fully automated results. I also noticed that I really like to play with materials and Niagara systems. For example, I created a dynamic date, time and weather system which affects the landscape. The type of precipitation is determined based on the player's height. If he is on a mountain, it will snow, and if he is in a valley, it will rain. The snow amount on rocks and buildings, for example, will change dynamically with the current weather, as well as the specular amount of the landscape, which make the ground look like if it's wet. I struggled with performance issues on the snowfall and rain at the beginning, because the way I set it up. I had a huge circular plane above the player's head, where the rain and snow particles spawned. As the wind increased, I had to also increase the spawn radius of the particles as well as the spawn amount, because they got blown out of the player's range. Also, I had to attach the particle system really high over the player's head, since I have a few really tall buildings which further increase the distance the particles travel through the wind. So I had to adjust the spawn size and spawn amount again and again and again, which caused my CPU draw to be really high. But finally I found a workaround by spawning the particles in a sphere around the player instead. So I was able to reduce the particle amount drastically, and if you enter the house, there will still be rain outside when you look out of the window. I also created a day and night cycle with realistic sun position and a date system. But enough talk about landscape and weather for now. Let's talk about AI. I started off with a simple deer and wolf AI to get into behavior trees. First, they looked really complicated, but if you have a deeper dive into how things work, they start to get easier. I think the choice of using behavior trees or not depends on the complexity of the AI. If it's a simple AI, I think I would go with code. But when the AI gets more complex, the amount of code increases drastically and can be very unmanageable. After I understood how to use behavior trees, I started working on a humanoid AI. So this is not a specific enemy, it's more of a masterclass for all kind of humanoid characters. For example, cultists, skeletons or bandits. Based on the weapon, spells, AI difficulty and class, the enemy gets created with randomized skeletal mesh and a random level which is clamped by the AI difficulty. So each time you place the skeleton, it will look a bit different. The same goes for cultists and fallen knights. The AI is able to block player attacks, it can switch between different attacks and attack types, and also switch between different combat styles if needed. For example, when there is a cultist mage and his mana is empty, he will switch to a bow, a sword or whatever weapon he has equipped. What's practical about this system, I can also use it for NPCs. So I haven't added AI behavior to the NPCs now, and also need to create all the NPCs, but the NPC system itself works. Any NPC can have a shop, an inventory, quests and a dialogue. I rebuilt the whole NPC system like 3 times because that was one of the first things I started off with when I learned Unreal Engine. So there was a lot of optimization work that had to be done to fit my current requirements and implementations. The player will be able to level 16 different skills on a custom-made skill tree, but as you can see, the performance of my skill stone is not optimal yet. As I said, I'm not a 3D artist, but even I realize now that over 25 million triangles on a mesh is a lot. Currently, nothing happens when leveling up a skill, so there is still a lot of work to do. The crafting system contains smithing, woodworking, alchemy, but also smaller tasks like tanning and melting. For smithing, there are 6 main materials used for swords, axes, maces and daggers. Iron, steel, copper, gold, hardstone and obsidian. With woodworking, the player can craft bows, arrows and staffs. To alchemy I have added basic potions like mana and health potions, but I'm planning to also implement potions to affect the player's strength or make him invisible, for example. Talking about strength, I really like the approach that you need a certain amount of strength to equip a larger or heavier weapon. Same goes for bows with dexterity and for staffs with intelligence. You can equip different combinations of weapons and also mix it up with magic. Let's say you have a one-handed sword equipped and a fireball spell. You can choose between them or use them together. The magic spell will affect the weapon damage, which you can also level as a skill. With that system, I want to make switching between different combat styles easier for the player. Overall, the game will contain a lot of magic combat, with the main focus on the storyline and the quests. But also it will give the player enough space to explore the land. I will also not limit the area where the player can move in. That will be regulated by the AI level. So if the player's level is too low for a certain area, chances are high that the enemies there will defeat him. There would be a lot more to show off, like the lockpicking system or the player's transformation into a raven, which is also anchored in the main story. But that's something for another devlog. Thank you guys for watching, and I would really appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to my channel for more devlog updates. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if you want me to go deeper into a specific topic in a future devlog. See you next time, bye!